Hi, and welcome back to another one of 2015's adventure rides on Left Shark, my little WR250R. This ride takes us all the way to Lee River, Manitoba on the east side of Winnipeg, about 10 hours from Saskatoon, for a hare scramble with the Manitoba Dirt Riders. Joining me for this ride is a good friend from Saskatoon, Tim, on his inferior in every way DRZ400 that's been with him for a few years. But just kidding though, it's been fun to spar back and forth about the virtues of each one of the bikes, and as we found out this year through a reasonable amount of riding, it's surprising how different they are considering they're very similar in size and power output. You'll notice for the first minute or two of this video that we aren't actually racing. We met with a couple other people from Saskatchewan, and one of them was very kind and showed us around the trails, and as this is both myself and Tim, it's our first hare scramble or race of any kind. We had no idea what to expect as far as track layout or where our skill level fit in, so a good fellow named Duncan was kind enough to drag us around on I believe it was the C circuit. And after riding that, and you'll see here in a couple of seconds as to why, we decided that maybe we'd start at the bottom in the sportsman class. For those of you that are concerned, Tim did in fact survive this crash, although we suspect that, as you'll see later in the video, that he may have taken some radiator damage as he went over. Another one of the things we discovered during the pre-ride is that nice wide handlebars that work great in the sand don't work at all in the forest. Here we are at the start line. I'd estimate there's probably somewhere between 50 and 70 bikes across a variety of classes, ranging all the way from pro right down to junior Bs, I think, that were surprisingly fast, but only 11 to, I believe, 13 years old. As you can see here, I decided on a nice leisurely pace to begin the race. I didn't want to get tied up in everybody, as I was nervous enough starting my first race, and the terrain, as we found out the day before, was much rockier than anything I'd ridden on, and a little bit tricky to go into while your nerves are still shaking a little bit. You see right here at the beginning of the race, after only about a minute on, we started to get our first of the bikes that were to crash out or mechanical out of the race. The terrain is especially hard on the bikes, as everything just didn't have any give. There's no soft spots, no sand that we were used to riding into, and the trail was so tight it was easy to get kicked off into something pretty rigid. And I know that everybody on YouTube will tell you that the hill doesn't look as steep or the rocks aren't as big or whatever in the video as it is in real life. In this case, I can absolutely confirm for you that the video does not do justice to just how many jagged rocks that were sticking out of the ground. Most of them range anywhere from about 4 to about 8 inches tall. If you could see the suspension, you'd see that it bottomed out probably every couple of seconds for the entire hour-long race. Here we have our one piece of mercy through the course. It's a stretch of probably about 200 yards long that is the only straight, flat stretch with no trees or rocks in it for laps that are taking us in between 10 and 12 minutes for an hour. Now, I had to include this clip here because it involves me passing Tim. It was the only time I got around him, and he only got around me once, and about half a lap after that, when I tipped over for a couple of seconds. It was amazingly hard to get around people on this track, and while you'll see him a lot in this video, we did spread out and catch up to each other quite a lot, and at the end of the race, so we ended up only about 6 seconds apart, which is pretty incredible considering the length. That grass section separated the first and the second portion of the course. I guess we were divided into two parts. The sportsmen and the junior A's, junior B's, and then the women all went down in this woods section here where the rocks weren't quite as jagged, and there weren't as many drop-offs or sharp climbs, but it was technical in its own right as just being super tight with a lot of corners with just small jagged rocks to kick you offline. This year is my first year with I guess it would be classified as a small dual sport, coming off of a much larger bike in a BMW GS. You could do a lot of off-roading with that, but nothing like this. You just simply wouldn't fit, and your ground clearance wasn't high enough, and the weight was just too much to manage. So I've been busy learning a lot. These stumps that you have to go over and these logs they have across the track, that's a whole new experience for me, and I was very glad to have Tim there and Duncan there, people that could show me how to do these things, and you'd be amazed what you can do when you just kind of stop thinking about it and just try to mimic what the people in front of you are doing. But as you see here, mimicking will only get you so far. Experience eventually comes back and allows you to avoid accidents like this, although I did feel a little bit better that, as you see here in a second, the pro rider crashed out right behind me on exactly the same rock, so I guess it's not just the new guys going over. One of the great things of these events is the people that are standing there that can help you out and make sure they are right after a big wreck like that. And I'm pretty sure that he got up, or at least that they carted him out quickly, as the next time I came around 10 minutes later, he wasn't there. This being my first event, a lot of these experiences were new to me, but I can't say how encouraging it was to see all these families and kids lined up along the side cheering you on through these tough corners and hill climbs, sitting there screaming at you and ringing their cowbells just like it was, you know, championships of the world with a Red Bull. I guess as we're in the middle of the race now, it's as good a time as any to explain just what kind of event this is and who puts it on. Manitoba Dirt Riders is the support group or the organization that puts this on. I think they put on 9 events this year, right across Manitoba. Great group of people. They were super helpful in any way that they could, information-wise, support. We got extra fuel when we stupidly didn't fill up in the morning before we got to the track. There's races available for everybody from, I think there was a kid there that was only about 3 years old racing. He looked amazingly cute as he was bombing around, and you can guarantee that next year I'll be doing my best to bring my 2 kids out there and get them involved in the races, as the tracks were modified for age and for size of bike and experience. Really anybody that is on a bike or has family that's on a bike should check out one of these events. It's a great group of people, and I can guarantee that you'll have a good time even if you're just there to watch. And while I give the people on the left here the benefit of the doubt as to why they were standing there, sometimes I wonder whether it's just kind of an ambulance syndrome where they're waiting there for guys like me to go by, and then they can spot the carnage so they can put it on YouTube before I get my video up. And you know by lap 3 where we are here that you're starting to feel a little better and you're getting into a rhythm, and then some little 11-year-old kid just blows by you like you're standing still to really poke a hole in that tiny little ego that you managed to inflate by this point. Just bugging them though. Some of these kids were very gifted riders and had obviously been doing it for a long time, and their enthusiasm for it, the grins on their faces were infectious. It was a great time to be around them and to be on the same track as them. For some of you that might be new to the concept of a hare scramble, thought an explanation would be in order. A few times through the video here you see us pulling off to the side and letting some people by. We weren't just being good sportsmen there and just letting everybody by so they could finish ahead of us. Everybody from every class races at least the first half of the course together, and then we split off into several different loops. But some of the riders were in the pro class were immensely faster than we were, so as they came up behind you, they'd usually rev their engine, or you could hear them coming and you pull off to the side to let them by. It's just standard fare there, and everybody seemed to get to it pretty well. Nobody was too pushy and nobody stuck in the way too much. This was the second race of the day and an hour long. Later in the day the pro classes went again and did a 2-hour long race, but in our case 1 hour was plenty enough as we were pretty exhausted by the end. You try to plan ahead and you try to think your way through these things, and you think you can just blast through as fast as possible, and you really can't. You have to pace yourself quite well, as honestly after about 20 minutes, half an hour, you're so exhausted, you're just trying not to make mistakes, and if you can get through a lap without making a mistake, it is substantially faster than trying to burst your way through a lap and having to pick up your bike 2 or 3 times. It may seem light at the beginning of the race, but by the 5th or 6th time that you pick it up, you can barely get it up, and riding tired after you pick the bike up, you just end up making more and more mistakes and creating more and more of a problem for yourself. Here we are through the final stretch of the race. I'm tied up with Tim again, and for the life of me I just could not get around him. Probably the last lap and a half, I was pretty much right on his tail, but he didn't seem to tip over in any that time, and I couldn't make any passes that wouldn't have involved me just driving over his bike into a corner or something, so I figured that probably wouldn't be all that sportsmanlike, considering we had to spend the next 10 hours after this driving home back to Saskatoon. But win goes to him in this one. He places 5th place out of 8, and I placed 6th out of 8, which I think, considering our first time and the fact that we were, I believe, the only people there on street legal bikes, I think we did relatively well, and more importantly is we got through it without too much injury, and we just had an absolute great time, and both of us are planning to go back next year for a couple more races. I included some pictures at the end of this video so you can get some idea of just how hard this was on our bikes. The first 3 pictures are from mine. Have this new swept back design on the foot pegs that's quite stylish, as well as a brake pedal that I managed to bend by hitting a rock head on. Tim's bike, you can see there at the end with the radiator, is substantially bent, although surprisingly not leaking, so we'll have to repair up and gas up and come back for next year.